Soren Kierkegaard, Chapter 4. It was both the burden and pride of Kierkegaard to be a writer, and the many facets of his strange personality expressed themselves brilliantly in his work. He spoke as a poet and scholar, seducer and moralist. He was joyful and witty, but also desperately sad, a passionate fighter, and a detached observer of those and himself. He was nothing to the exclusion of anything else. Like the possessed man in the parable of the Gadarene swine, he was, quote unquote, many. During the first phase of his writing, and it is one more of his life's mysteries than these almost unbearable tensions did not explode into the complete disorder of mental derangement. This uncanny versatility of his genius expressed itself in the scintillating varieties of his style. Each time it is perfectly adapted to the overtones it wishes to convey. When he makes the seducer speak, his vocabulary is glib and persuasive. The faithful husband's words are clear and firm. The somber tone of his melancholy spreads a note of gloom. His religious ecstasies are truly infectious. His elegant humor is of the most facile kind. His vitriolic attacks upon church and clergy rally the reader to intense partisanship, and his sermons speak even to modern man's condition with the pathos of biblical authority. And finally, when he wants to be nothing but the skeptical critic, he conveys an air of superiority that is convincing because it rises not from doubt but from a newly won and profound faith. Kierkegaard was conscious of these contradictions within himself, knowing that between his melancholia and his true self there was, quote, a world of fantasy which in part I have expressed through my pseudonyms, close quote. When publishing his Papers of One Still Living, 1838, he added the remark that they were, quote, published contrary to the will of S.K., close quote, a note symbolic of his inward conflict. His writings during the first two stages of his life, the aesthetic and the ethical, appear under suggestive, contradictory, and ultimately mysterious pen names, such as Victor Eremitus, Johannes de Silentio, Constantinius, Johannes Climacus, Anticlimacus, Frater Taciturnus, Inter, and Hilarious Bogbinder. The indirect method of conveying his thoughts by shreds of witticism, anecdotes, and volcanic epigrams expressed itself in the disguise not only to camouflage his real personality, if one can speak of such an ultimate core of his being at all, but also to detach his thoughts from their author's personality. He was giving new laws for universal thinking and living. Even his later works treat the religious with artful perfection and give his art everywhere a religious note. He who is initiated into such an overpowering vision of man's existence in the presence of God and Kierkegaard, in the presence of God as Kierkegaard had been chosen to endure, sees no contradiction in such a method of communication. The universality of truth everywhere shines through. It is too enormous to be confined to any one style, and Kierkegaard, like Pascal 200 years earlier, and Nietzsche 50 years later, employs this method of indirect communication on the highest level. It is more than accidental that his doctor's thesis dwelt with the concept of irony, this being perhaps the keenest medium for conveying truth by indirect suggestion. The personal, or as he preferred to call it, the subjective thinker in Kierkegaard chose to speak thus in a highly controversial manner. In so doing, he adapted himself perfectly to the nature of all spirituality, which is always a matter of experience and cannot be caught in the images of logical communication. The more concrete and positive we are in speaking about God, the lower is the level of comprehending Him. As Kierkegaard illustrated in his Religious Discourses and Exercise in Christianity, religion resides in the interior and spiritual realm and eludes logical and direct communication. Jesus' fondness for teaching in parables, a method open to many interpretations, is related to this fact. As we shall see in a later chapter, Kierkegaard never tired of stressing the nature of existence as becoming, fluctuating, evolving, and its logical formulation is always apt to be inauthentic. Heidegger, too massive and stationary. Moreover, the essence of human existence is uncertainty, the very realm in which faith, not knowledge, must live to become meaningful. Thus, indirect suggestion towards truth is the only adequate vehicle for its mysterious character. Even in the realm of ordinary human sympathy, pity, or hate, our most adequate expressions are indirect and symbolical, as, incidentally, modern psychoanalysts have verified, not only for our dream life, but for the whole domain of subconscious and involuntary suggestions. Indirect communication is a realm of religious truth. Indirect communication in the realm of religious truth necessitates the making of moral choices. It involves also a hidden appeal to the listener to explore his own situation for insufficiency and guilt, and to view earnestly his potential future. Its most mysterious expression concerns the fact that God, unlimited and eternal, cannot be comprehended by man's ordinary logical processes. Christ, claiming to be God and man, is the absolute paradox. He is eternal truth becoming into being in time. He lived 1,900 years ago, but is contemporaneous with the believer. He is a, quote, sign of contradiction, close quote, as are his parables and miracles. And finally, he is as much an offense to our logic as he was unacceptable to his contemporaries. Belief alone can comprehend the paradox, an attitude that will risk an experiment in living. Dostoevsky's Sarets Sosima meant this same existential faith when he told the doubting woman that she would become convinced of God's reality to the degree that she progressed in practicing Christian love. Christian faith is something to be lived. It cannot be comprehended in abstracto.